Shalom and welcome to Jewels of Judaism. In this video, I want to answer the question, what does faith in God look like? This week's Torah portion is called Shalach Lecha, which means send out, and we read these words in the first two verses of our Torah portion, which begins in Numbers chapter 13. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the sons of Israel. So Moses obeyed the command of the Lord. He chose 12 men, one man from each tribe, a leader of the tribe. He sent them out into the land of Canaan, which would be the promised land, and he asked them to see what kind of land it is and to see what kind of people are living in it. The spies spent 40 days in the land, came back and reported to Moses, Aaron, and the people. Now, when they reported to the people, 10 of the men reported a bad report. They gave a bad report to the people, saying, the land is good, however, there are giants in the land, they're going to devour us, we cannot defeat them. On the other side was Joshua and Caleb, who gave a good report, and they said, it's a very good land, and there are giants in the land, however, God is with us, their protection is removed, and we will be victorious. Now, as we all know, the people sided with the 10 who gave the bad report, and they rejected the good report of Joshua and Caleb. And when they rejected the good report of Joshua and Caleb, they were actually rejecting God himself. The people talked about returning to Egypt, and they also talked about stoning Joshua and Caleb. It was at this time that the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting and spoke to Moses. And he actually said to Moses that he wanted to completely wipe out all the Israelites, and that he wanted to start a new nation through Moses. Now Moses pleaded with God to forgive the people, to pardon them, and God did forgive them. However, God said that all of those 20 years old and older would die in that desert, and their children, however, would enter the land. We see God's word further explained in chapter 14, verse 33. The Lord said this, Your sons shall be shepherds for 40 years in the wilderness, and they will suffer for your unfaithfulness until your corpses lie in the wilderness. So the Lord was speaking to the Israelites who were 20 years and older, and he was saying, your sons, your children, those who are under 20 years of age, are going to be shepherds for 40 years. And during that 40 years, they're going to suffer for your unfaithfulness as your corpses will die in the wilderness. Now, when it says they will suffer for your unfaithfulness, God was referring to the unbelief of the people. They did not have faith to believe God and go into the land as he commanded them. This word unfaithfulness, the word for your unfaithfulness in the Hebrew is zunatechem. And this comes from the root word zana, which means prostitution, adultery, fornication. It's a very strong word that illustrates the unfaithfulness of the people. They rejected God. They went to another lover. They rejected their first love. So God says that your lack of faith in me is like prostitution. It's like adultery against me. It was a very devastating blow to the Lord, their unfaithfulness. Now, interestingly enough, we see a great contrast to the prostitution, to the unfaithfulness of the children of Israel in the section from the prophets. There's always a corresponding prophets reading. This week it's Joshua chapter 2. So in Joshua chapter 2, it's now 40 years later. All of the first generation of Israelites died in the wilderness. Now their children are grown up and are going into the land with Joshua at the lead. And we read this in the first two verses of Joshua chapter 2. It says, Then Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men as spies secretly from Shittim, saying, Go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came into the house of a prostitute, whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. So as we see Joshua getting ready to go into the land with the children of Israel, he sends 2 spies. He asks them to go into the land, especially into Jericho. They go into the city of Jericho, and they stay with a prostitute, whose name is Rahab, as the word tells us here. So it's very interesting that God says that what the children of Israel did by not believing him was an act of prostitution, was an act against God, an act of unfaithfulness. And now we have the children of Israel going into the land, and the two spies stay with a prostitute. Now this prostitute is actually a woman of faith. Her name is Rahab. Now it tells us in Joshua chapter 2, she has heard about all that God has done for the Israelites, bringing them out of Egypt, bringing them across the Red Sea. Now this was 42 years ago. She's heard about all of these miracles that God has done for his people. How he brought them out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, how he dried the Red Sea, how he has given them this land. And she was saying, and she told these two spies, the fear of God, the fear of the Israelites is upon the people. All the hearts of the people have melted. She knew the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She believed in him. And she told them that she knew that this land was now theirs. Now she made a deal with these two spies for her own life and for the life of her family so that they could live. And the spies agreed with her. Rahab was a prostitute. But despite her past, she had faith in God. She overcame her past, and she went into a glorious future. She preserved her own life, the life of her family. She is recorded as the great-great-grandmother of King David, and she's also recorded in Hebrews chapter 11 as one of those of great faith. Rahab was a woman of faith who walked out her belief. She is an example to us. In contrast to the prostitution that the children of Israel displayed in their unbelief toward God, Rahab the prostitute turned to God in faith, and the Lord blessed her, allowing her to stay in the land and giving her a great heritage, a great lineage through King David. We need to learn from the faith of Rahab to believe God and walk forward. Faith is not just an intellectual agreement. Faith is acting on what we know to be true. It's believing God. Rahab illustrated a living, active faith, and we need to do that as well. What is God calling us to today? What is he saying to you today? What is he calling you to agree to according to his plan? We need to understand what God's plans are and walk in faith accordingly. I've given you a brief overview of my commentary. I invite you to read my full commentary on my website, jewelsofjudaism.com, under the title, Faith Like a Prostitute. I want to thank you for watching this video today. Feel free to share it with others. If you've enjoyed it, please like it on YouTube. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.